already started. Welcome everybody to this webinar on NFTs and cryptocurrency, just a beginner's guide, everything you need to know to learn about this new technology, this new space. I'm Aubrey Bergauer, if we haven't met yet, and just a quick introduction on myself. Most people know me from my work as executive director of the California Symphony. I led that orchestra for 5 years. We doubled the audience, quadrupled the donor base. Before that, a decade in Seattle at the leading institutions, Seattle Symphony and Seattle Opera. The last couple years, I have been working with other organizations to achieve the same kind of success and really implement those same strategies and tactics that led to growth to really change the narrative. And I've now worked with over 50 clients, ranging in budget size from $300,000 to $300 million, all to say, I've worked with organizations of all sizes, like so many of you, the range of people on this call today. So welcome. And if you're watching this online later, welcome to you too. This past year, I have learned the importance of native land acknowledgement. So I just want to say that I am coming at you from the original land of the Ohlone people. Those were the original inhabitants of the Northern California coast. Specifically, we know that area today as San Francisco, and want to just acknowledge them as the original inhabitants of this land here. Fast forward to today, and if you need a visual description, if that's helpful to you, I am a white woman. I'm in my late 30s and wearing a Glen plaid dress, brown wavy hair. So if that's helpful to you, great. And as we're getting going, I just want to introduce our panel. This is a group that has taught me a lot about this topic that we're covering today, a lot about NFTs, a lot about cryptocurrency, blockchain. We're going to define all of that as we get into it today. And some of this group had reached out to me over the last several months. Some of this group I reached out to. And again, just a really great group of experts. And I'm so glad for their time and just being able to share their expertise with all of you today. So quickly, let me introduce everybody, and then we'll get into the meat of our time here. First up, I want to introduce Nicholas Reeves. Nick is a composer of the first classical music NFT sold on the blockchain. That piece is called Betty's Notebook. And that sale, just so you all know, grossed $375,000. We're going to get into the case study later today, but that project was later covered by NPR and All Things Considered. Nick was trained at the Manhattan School of Music, Westminster Choir College before that. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm coming from Long Island, the land of the Merricks.
Awesome. Okay, next I want to introduce Christina Spinet. Christina is the composer of the first new work for full orchestra on the blockchain. So whereas Nick's piece was the first classical music piece, Christina's piece is the first piece for full orchestra sold on the blockchain. That piece was called Prelude. Christina was recently featured on APM's Marketplace talking about the process of bringing a work like this to the market. So Christina, also a super great composer, trained at a little school called Juilliard. And Christina, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Next, I want to introduce Drew Alexander Ford. Drew is a professional violist, a blockchain entrepreneur, and if you're a fan of the Sphinx organization, fan of Afa Dvorkin, then you will love that he has been called by Afa the future of our field. Can't say I disagree. Drew has performed on commercial recordings ranging from John Legend to Mac Miller to Hollywood soundtracks. If you're a Lovecraft Country fan, Drew's on that soundtrack as well. And also a performer on an upcoming crypto release project with Christina. Let's see, what else can I tell you? Another Juilliard grad and host of the Faking Notes podcast and advisor to Coda Labs, which is a crypto startup. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Aubrey. I'm very humbled. I'm coming from Los Angeles. It's the land of the Gabrioleño people and the Tataviam people. I'm just so excited to have this discourse because the future is already happening, and we got to get on board.
Love it. All right, continuing our round robin here. Next up, Kim Niltemi, you all know as the president and CEO of the Dallas Symphony. She has just been crushing it, if I may say so, in that role there. And they have been doing so many wonderful things at the Dallas Symphony, including a recent NFT project with the DSO and the Met Opera Orchestra, for all of you who followed that over the recent weeks. And Kim is really bringing to this conversation, not just her experience bringing and leading that NFT project to market, but also navigating the collective bargaining agreement as well as the IMA integrated media agreement. So welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm coming from Dallas, North Texas, the land of the Wichita, Comanche, Caddo, and Cherokee tribes. And it's a very exciting conversation. So thanks so much.
Love it. And last but not least, I want to introduce Sam Brookman. Sam is the founder and artistic director of the Verdigris Ensemble. He is the brains behind Betty's Notebook, which was the very first piece I mentioned, composed by Nicholas Reeves. And he now also has been consulting with not just the Dallas Symphony on their recent project, but other unionized organizations on their NFT projects. And he's performed with the New York Philharmonic and Philadelphia Orchestra, among others. So Sam, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Aubrey, for having me. Great to be here. I'm coming at you from Brooklyn, New York, which is the original land of the Lenape people. Really thrilled to be part of this and looking forward to the discussion.
All right, let's hit it. So just to give everybody watching an overview of the format for our time together today, we're going to start off with sort of a lightning round with this group. So we're going to hit a lot of different vocabulary words, really defining a lot of these terms, getting into FAQs, really trying to establish a shared baseline understanding. So from there, after we do this sort of rapid fire round robin, then we're going to move into some case studies. So I've already touched on several different case studies that we'll cover. We are also going to start outside of classical music to look at some case studies to see what has been working elsewhere as other people have entered this space, and then we'll work our way in closer to home in our field here. From there, we're going to get into the how, the nuts and the bolts of how do we produce an NFT project, how to bring a project to market. So we'll look at that. And then before we end our time together, we are going to uncover some reasons not to do this. So there are some good reasons why this technology might not be right for your organization or your ensemble. So we're going to talk about that too before we wrap up. All of that, I think, is going to take about an hour. And if you want to leave or bounce at the end of that hour, of course, that's fine. If you want to hang around, if you have questions, you can use the Q&A function. I'll look at those questions when we get to the end. And then if you want to stay, the panel has agreed to stay a little bit for some Q&A as well. So that's the roadmap for our time together today. Let's get into it. So round robin, I'm going to call on you all. So Drew, I'm going to start with you. What is the blockchain? Tell us, please.
Oh, it's the moment of truth. Okay. Full disclosure, it's been taking me the better part of like 4 years to really wrap my head around it and to figure out how to explain it in a simple way. The simplest way I can explain a blockchain is that it's a ledger. Like it's just a record of transactions. And if that's all you walk away from here, like understanding, that's going to be okay. What's so powerful about blockchain technology is that you can record any type of transaction. It's not owned by any one centralized body. And because of the nature of the way the codes are written in many different types of blockchains, they're hard to hack and they're really hard to defraud, and they're really secure. So it's a really great way for anybody to have a record of transactions that happen over a period of time, literally search for the transaction, see when it was done, the parties that were involved. And that's incredibly powerful. It's very simple, but that's a very powerful concept.
So sticking with you, next question, Drew. Who manages the blockchain chain or oversees the blockchain? Is it universally accepted as reliable, given everything you're saying about the protections against fraud? Say a little about all that.
For sure. It's not managed by one person. The way we traditionally think about systems in society, they tend to be centralized. Like when you think of a bank, the banks and the Federal Reserve, they control all of the money. You can't just email the Federal Reserve and say, hey, can I look at your ledger? You can't really do that. Like even the government, like the way money is spent, it's not exactly super transparent. All the transactions that happen there, it's done in a centralized way. With a blockchain, it is decentralized and not one central body owns it or operates it. It is actually operated by, depending on the blockchain, up to thousands of different particular computers that are called nodes. Okay, see, there's all this vocab, right? Stick with me. A node is a powerful computer that works complex computer problems to pretty much maintain the blockchain. And each one of these nodes has a full, complete record of every transaction that has ever happened on the blockchain. And they can be located and are located across the planet. So you have nodes in Japan, you have nodes in Africa, you have nodes in Canada, you have nodes in Australia, you have nodes all over Asia. And so what makes this very secure is that because each node has a full record, complete record in its database, if an actor were to come outside and try to change the record of that blockchain, they would have to change simultaneously every single node on the planet at the same time. And that's really hard to do. So that's really what makes it secure, because if there is a node that acts in bad faith and has a different record that differs from the consensus around the world, that record of the blockchain is rejected and the rest of the nodes go with what they all agree upon. And that's what's so powerful.
Thank you for that. I feel like from my own learning and understanding, the more I've understood decentralized currency versus centralized banking, like you said, has been a real, just a really pivotal point in my own learning and understanding for all of this. So thank you. So further getting into the legitimacy of this market platform, whatever the correct word is. Sam, this question is for you. Christie's, Sotheby's, they're now selling artwork on the blockchain. Can you talk about this? Is this like a one-off thing? Is this trendy? Are they doing it more and more? What's happening there?
Seeing a lot of very interesting things happen on the market. So a couple of interesting points to note here. There are a lot of collectors currently that are trying to be very exuberant and very optimistic about the purchase of NFTs because they want it to be adopted by mainstream society, essentially. And so what we've seen is the first sort of Christie's sale that happened, or one of the first, was Beeple. First 5,000 days at Christie's, which sold for about $69 million. That $69 million is, I believe that's the highest that a living artist has ever been paid as a result of an auction at that point. And so what that has told Christie's and Sotheby's and auction houses across the board is that there is a market for this, or that there is a significant amount of interest for this. So some auction houses certainly are doing this more than others, and some are approaching it very cautiously. Others are very exuberant about it. It's a Christie's and Sotheby's. Christie's even more than Sotheby's, very enthusiastic about it. They have an entire department now dedicated to, or are building a department dedicated to, the sale of NFTs, whether that's photography, whether that's music, whether that's visual art, and so on and so forth. And this further adds to the idea that blockchain and NFTs are here to stay, and we see a lot more sort of price action going on. Just 2 days ago, I believe, Bored Apes, which is a visual art NFT, sold for something along the lines of $19 million at Sotheby's, and we will continue to see a lot of that. So to answer your question, I do not believe that, I think auction houses are taking this very, very seriously, and I think they will continue to do so as we gain more collectors in the space, and as we gain more interest from people across the board.
Yeah, thank you for that. So back to some vocabulary words. Nick, you're up for this one. NFT, non-fungible token, but what does that mean? Please define it for us. And is that the product that's being sold? Can you just talk about that? The language is a little confusing to me as a newcomer, to be honest, because I hear the first NFT sold and I don't even understand fully what that means. So can you break it down for all of us, please?
Absolutely. Just so everyone knows who's listening in right now, I am a neophyte as well. I had to learn about all of this starting last November. And I think many people who have entered this space, whether they're classical musicians, EDM artists, hip hop artists, they're all in the same place. We all have to start at the basics. So I had to figure out, what is an NFT, a non-fungible token. Basically, that means that you have coding on the blockchain that shows immutability. It shows that you have a one-of-a-kind asset. And what that means is your asset could be digital art, it could be digital music, it could be real estate, it could be a car. Christina and I were joking about the certain things you can sell. Some people are absurd what they put on the blockchain. You know, you can look at these ridiculous things people try to sell, but you can assign a coding number, serial number to a certain asset, whether it's physical or whether it's digital. And so the NFT becomes that token. It represents that you have rarity. You have one of the only in the world. So here's the analogy I give. I was trying to explain this to my nephew this past weekend. He loves baseball. He loves cards. And I said, if you had a Ty Cobb card from the early 20th century and you saw it in an auction house and it was pristinely put in glass, no human hands could touch it. So for all intents and purposes, it's not physically tangible, but you know that that little piece of paper, which without the image means nothing. But once you put that image on the piece of paper, all of a sudden you start associating that image, that player, with his statistics, the plays he made, the value he brought to his team, how many of those cards exist in the world. And what's very interesting, you start to see a lot of associations between a little piece of paper that we call a baseball card or basketball card or football card that you never touch, you'll never handle, and the paper itself doesn't do anything. It's the associative value that comes with that little piece of paper. So what the non-fungible token is, it's the digital equivalent of that little piece of paper that we call the baseball card, if you will. It's rare, there's only one in the world. So for instance, when Sam Brookman approached me about making Betty's Notebook work for the NFT space, because it originally was a concert piece, and we made it so it could be crypto native into the NFT world. We'll explain that term later. What we did is he said that this is going to be minted and it's going to have this number assigned to it. It's going to be the only one in the world, so that when it is sold, the person who, or people or community who buys this, they have that coding to show that they have the one and only in the world. But that does not mean that as an artist, we'll talk about this later, that I can't make a record of my album. Verdigris Ensemble, who recorded it, they keep their intellectual property. I keep the copyrights as the composer. All it means is that you've registered this online so that when you sell that audio, visual, digital experience, not a CD, not a record, when you sell that experience that you have online, you can show that it's a one of a kind. That's really all it means. There's more to talk about, but it's about rarity and immutability.
Thank you for distilling that, one of a kind. Okay, so Christina, I want to move on to you. My question for you is, why is this all happening? Why are people buying art on the blockchain? NFTs, why are people using cryptocurrency? Like, that's a big question, but why?
Well, we live in an increasingly digitalized world. And with COVID last year, that just sped everything up. Look at us now, we're meeting on Zoom. We're doing all of our meetings still through the web, pretty much. Healthcare started to go online last year with telecare. People were making doctor's visits online. So why shouldn't our culture also be online? A lot of symphonies were releasing streaming videos and concerts. And at the same time, blockchain technology has been around for years, but NFTs were maybe starting in 2018 to really pick up steam. So that all coalesced with us being home on our screens. People want new digital art because it's an investment. It's a legacy. It's something that doesn't lose its value. It doesn't disintegrate. If there's a storm or a natural disaster, you're not going to lose that work because it's on your wallet. It's forever in the space. You could pass it down to your family, to generations, and as long as it's on the blockchain, it'll be there forever.
Thank you. And continuing with you, Christina, you were one of the first people to give me examples of the types of products, the type of art often being sold. So can you give some of these examples, even starting outside of classical music? You've been so great in sharing them with me. Can you elicit some of that for everybody?
So people can put anything basically on the blockchain as an NFT. Photographers are increasingly releasing their photos as NFTs. You have a lot of documents. You can have contracts, PDF files, digital paintings, digital art, PNG files, and with music, it's mostly MP3s. We can sometimes release WAV files, but that can be a little too large for the systems in place now. So with musicians, a lot of the times it's MP3 files. But as long as it can be digitized, you can make it into an NFT.
Thank you. All right. If as long as it can be digitized, you can sell it as an NFT is what I'm hearing. All right. Okay, Kim, these next few questions are for you. You're on deck. The question I have first is, when we're thinking now about classical music in our art form, why couldn't a buyer get the score and the parts and then make copies and distribute them, or just share the MP3 file and blast it out to everybody they know? Can you explain some of this to us?
Well, it's the same as the whole publishing business. There's music that's created. There's a publisher for it. It's copyrighted, and yes, you have cases of people, copying it, digitizing it, sending it around, but they're breaking the copyright. So it's the same concept. This is just starting as digital, and it has the number after it's minted, and that's what proves that you own it and that it isn't to be distributed. But yes, to some degree, there's no way to stop people, and I don't know that there's a policing that exists like in the world of music publishers, where they would actually file a lawsuit against someone or an entity for using their music without paying for it. And so I think that's something that would have to, in the future, happen for people to feel maybe like it's 100% value, because nothing could happen to it. But in the end, I think the analogy that Christina used about passing it down, right? I mean, if we all think about the archives of various arts institutions, that letter written by a famous artist, or by Picasso or by Shostakovich, that is in your archives, has a value, that original letter. And so how do we now think about these digital assets of having that, because they have a serial number, they have that same value. It's not the same as a copy of it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And this is what I'm learning, is that the NFT is what makes it original, makes it unique. That is not replicable, is what I'm learning. So thank you. Let's see, sticking with you. Okay, if all of this so far, everybody that we've covered is sort of 101, I feel like this question is like 201 level, which is secondary sales. So can you explain secondary sales? Is this akin to an auction house or not? Please illuminate that for us.
Yes, so if someone owns an NFT, they can resell it, and they can resell it in, using the same way that they purchased it, using one of the companies that does this, like a Rarible or one of the others, or they can do it through more traditional, like a Christie's. But the thing is the artist doesn't get any of these proceeds. So once the owner resells it, the owner makes the money. And I think that Sam can probably speak at some point to sort of what's happening. This is a regular thing that people are buying just to resell. They're not actually interested in holding on to it. They want to have it until it increases in value and then make a profit on it.
Thank you. Okay, let's see here. Jumping back to Drew. This gets into more maybe defining some terms, but what is the difference in cryptocurrency? Everybody's heard of Bitcoin. I've learned that that's not what almost all of these art pieces are being transacted with. So can you break that down for us, please, these different cryptocurrencies?
For sure. Okay. So what is money, right? What is currency, right? It's something that you use to pay your taxes with. It's something you use to pay transactions with. Cryptocurrency is essentially the same. It's the same function, right? In each of these ecosystems, in order to execute a smart contract or execute a transaction, one must use that currency. And these currencies are so interesting because the way that the transactions are written down, they're written down in hashes, which are just a string of numbers and letters that allow each of the parties to be pseudo-anonymous. You can still look up on the blockchain to see those long string of numbers sending money to this long string of numbers, but without auditing a platform for a know your customer or a KYC, there is no way to figure out whose identity is associated with that string of numbers or the hashes. That's what makes it crypto, kind of hidden, pseudo-anonymous. And that's when you get a lot of the FUD about like, oh, it's for illicit activities. Illicit activities are committed in cash all the time. So that's just a non-starter. Now, when you talk about cryptocurrencies and the differences, you must look at every blockchain and every project differently, like they are different nations, like they are different countries with different rules, different tax laws, different. So it's important to look at it like that. And the value of a currency comes down to what are called tokenomics, or essentially economics of tokens, supply and demand. If you have a project like Cardano that has a huge supply, the more supply of tokens there are, the less each token is valued. And the value of the token only comes from its use cases. So with Bitcoin's like gold. You buy some and it stares back at you. It doesn't really do anything. You can kind of like use it to transact, but that's about it. And shout out to El Salvador yesterday for making Bitcoin, being the first country in the world to make Bitcoin legal tender. It's really great. And it's a really good push for the space. Now, we're talking about NFTs, right? NFTs are possible because of smart contract technology, which we'll kind of get into a little bit later, but they don't operate on the Bitcoin blockchain. Bitcoin is like the granddaddy of all these blockchains, doesn't have a lot going on, not incredibly programmable. And so NFTs run on smart contract platforms like Ethereum. And so when you want to buy an NFT on the Ethereum blockchain, you have to pay for Ethereum. You have to pay with Ethereum. If you want to buy an NFT on the Icon blockchain, you have to use ICX. If you want to buy it on Cardano blockchain, which they just are going to be throwing up smart contract capability in a week or two, you would have to pay in ADA. So each of these blockchains have different currencies, the cryptocurrencies, and you use those to execute smart contracts and go through different applications. So it's just important to understand that cryptocurrencies are used to do things on these blockchains.
Great, thank you for that. So Christina, question for you. Here, this is literally the money question. How do artists and creators get paid? And then on the heels of that, I think we should jump to what is a smart contract. So Nick, first, Christina, how do artists and creators get paid? And then Nick, you can talk about what is a smart contract, because those two are related.
Well, when you set up your NFT project, there are a few different platforms that you can choose to release your work. Some are open, like OpenSea and Rarible and Mintable, where anyone could just go ahead and create their project and put it for sale. And others are curated, or they ask for invites for artists like Super Rare or Foundation. So there are two different types of platforms that you can release your work on. Once your work is out, it's been minted, it's available for sale. When somebody buys it, you have, well, let me back up for a second. When you do put your work on one of these platforms, you have what's called a crypto wallet. A lot of people use one called MetaMask. It's basically your identity number. It's like your login information. And you have to have a wallet to be able to interact with NFTs. So when your NFT is up for sale on one of these platforms, whoever decides to buy it has a wallet also, and the interaction is instantaneous. So when somebody decides that they want to pay 2 ETH for your project, the transaction happens, it takes maybe a few seconds, and the money is deposited directly into your wallet. You don't have to wait for anything really other than that transaction to happen and be verified. There are no invoices that you have to do as a artist. I know a lot of freelance artists, it takes a lot of time to go back and forth between invoices and getting approvals for payments and getting contracts. There's none of that. The contract is between the two wallets. Now, if you're working on a project with multiple artists, you can divide up what's in your wallet either personally, which I don't really suggest. There are wallets like Gnosis where you're allowed to have multi-signatures on it. So if me and Sam worked on a project together and we had this Gnosis wallet up on the website, it would divide our sales evenly between us. So it really depends on the artist how you want to split the profit if you're working in a group project. Some platforms do offer these splits. I think Foundation, Super Rare, other platforms like that allow artists to split the profit evenly. And then it depends on the organization, what they want to do from there. So if it's like an orchestra, maybe they're the ones with the wallet, because an orchestra has so many people, I'm sure you can't do 60 splits yet. Maybe in the future you'll be able to, but the orchestra probably gets the funds and then disperses it to the musicians. But I'm excited to see where it goes with these artist splits and what the technology allows us to do later for more people to get paid instantaneous. But that's one of the wonderful things about it, is that payment is instantaneous.
Okay, smart contract.
Do you want me to jump in there?
Yeah,
No
sorry.
problem.
Drew, I'm going to bounce to you next, but Nick, if you can take this one on smart contract, please.
Okay, absolutely. The smart contract is what provides utility to Ethereum. Ethereum is the currency. You'll see the symbol ETH if you're going to go look online for that. And what it allows you to do, it allows you to devise the agreement between the platform, the artist, whomever. And once it's there, it has automation. So for instance, let's say I wanted to drop an NFT and it was a song I wrote and I used a platform. Theoretically, with a smart contract, what I can do is I can have encoded in the blockchain on that ledger that the piece will sell for this amount of money, or that could be put on the platform. What's more important is you can distinguish percentages of a sell. You can distinguish percentages of royalties, resells, the work in perpetuity. So instead of me having to get a lawyer or a team who's always going to have to hunt down, or me, the artist, was the piece resold? Is it being used by other people? Did someone put this in their film score? Did someone use this on their TV show? Was this appropriated by somebody? Now they're claiming it as their own. I've mentioned this before in other talks. There was, for Juneteenth, there was a artist who, I think Malik Assad, he took different dancers, used an app on TikTok made 3D images of them to show that they were the originators of the dance that someone took on TikTok and claimed, or no one's giving credit to the originators of this dance. So what the smart contract can do, because you can show that you are the author, you have a one-of-a-kind ownership of this, there's no other in the world, you can say, you can use this piece, you can put this in your movie, you can put this in your television show, on the radio, you can sample it, but the smart contract can enumerate how that's used and how the different parties get royalties for that. There's more to it than that, but what's beautiful about the smart contract is it automates the whole process of the agreement. And it can take away a lot of the litigation that can ensue, which of course costs money and also takes time. With the smart contract, it's there, set on the ledger, it's done. So if you get royalties, secondary sales, whatever, you get it immediately. And that's more to what Drew was talking about. It's this immediacy that's really a game changer because it creates efficiency.
Thank you for that. Yeah, the smart contract is the contract, who gets paid, what percentage, it happens instantly upon a sale, it happens instantly again upon a secondary sale is what I'm understanding. Okay, for the sake of time, we're gonna keep it moving. Drew, back to you. How is all of this that we're saying different than a typical musician recording contract? Can you touch on that a little bit, please?
For sure. Typically, session musicians and musician contracts are buyouts. So you pay per service, you're paid per service, and there is no real, musicians don't get any real equity in the art. Now, if you are an artist and you're creating a work, then you get into a lot of legal territory, which is honestly why smart contracts are so powerful, like you said, Aubrey, and how you said, Nick, like litigation. What happens oftentimes, let's say you have an artist with a label, they make a song, the label owns the song, the label has the lawyers, the label goes and litigates copyright infringement and things like that. And when the artist is to be paid based off of royalties, the label gets paid first, and the label disseminates the funds to the artist. And in a lot of cases, the label has multiple banks. The entity using the intellectual property has multiple banks. Those banks have to talk to each other, but those banks are run by people that like to take vacations and breaks. And so, well, we got give it 10 days for the invoice to go through. Okay, give it 10 days for the ACH transfer to go through. Okay, give it 10 days for it to appear in your account. Before you know it, 6 months have passed, you still haven't gotten your money as an artist. And if you're a session musician, you have no equity. Smart contracts eliminate all of this. They give people, organizations the opportunity, hey, give me 0.1%, like pay me a buyout and give me 0.1% of all revenue that happens from this movie. That might be $500 tomorrow. Cool. I can pay groceries with that. You know, it just opens up so many opportunities.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like this point that you're making is one of the most to me interesting points of all of it, is taking out the middleman and really getting money into the pocket of artists faster, hopefully more of it. So thank you for that. Okay, last question. Kim, this is for you. Can you please speak to the question of environmental impact? This clearly weighs heavily on a lot of people. I've heard so much about the evolution of the environmental impact in this space. So can you break that down for us? And then for everybody, we'll move into case studies after that.
Great, thanks. Well, the selling and the minting does not use a lot of energy. That's pretty negligible. Same thing as streaming on a YouTube or Spotify. It's the mining, the supercomputers that are, basically running this entire network of currency around the world. And so that is the place where the energy is being used. I guess we could say that you could look at this the way you look at anything else you do, flying to Europe, flying to Asia. I mean, when you add up all of the energy that we consume in a year, no one knows exactly how comparable it is, but it's certainly something to think about. One can buy offsets, of course, just like, big corporations who say they want to be carbon neutral. buy offsets to adjust for the energy that they're using or the environmental impact they're having. And one could certainly commit to do that. And then, of course, it's evolving now. Ethereum is changing how the currency is mined. And so several of these companies are looking for ways to reduce the environmental impact, which obviously is very important and important, especially because over time, these currencies will be used more and more. So it goes way beyond the NFT thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, thank you. I think we'll come back to this in the Q&A at the very end for anybody who wants to go deeper on environmental impact. But this was a big part of my own learning, I'll say, is realizing, oh, it's not just these supercomputers expending tons of energy that is actually changing. So, and that is the limit of my knowledge on this. So again, we'll come back to that in the Q&A. So thank you for that, Kim. Okay, let's get into some case studies. I hope for everybody watching, our very non-lightning round was helpful to establish some shared baseline understanding. And now I want us to look at what are these real world applications? So first case study, Sam touched on it at the beginning, Beeple. This is what caught my attention earlier this year. This was March of 2021. So just to restate it very briefly, the artist Beeple sold the NFT via Christie's for $69 million. That made headlines. I'm sure many of you watching saw that, captured my attention as well. And that was successful because of Beeple's popularity, established popularity as an artist. And it was a collage of artwork he was already known for, is my understanding. So a lot of things really lined up for him. But it also is important in terms of a case study and a marker in this space. It's important because Christie's was behind it. And that really, from everything I've read and learned, really did help to legitimize this market. So that's the brief overview of Beeple, visual art. I feel like visual art as a whole has been faster to enter this space than us in the performing arts. So, all right, that's my very quick case study number one. Now, Drew, you're going to tell us what Taco Bell did.
Well, they had a limited drop, and this is kind of like one of the future use cases of NFTs, and one of the focuses that I'll be working on with Coda Labs as we're developing our platform. Taco Bell they did a limited drop, and this happened actually months ago, so I'm a little foggy on it, but they had a limited drop where you come through, you buy some tacos, and you give us your wallet, we're gonna send you a limited edition NFT. And that NFT could be used as a entry pass to limited edition like events. So let's say they haven't established any events yet, but they disseminated some NFTs, and their plans are to have like parties, a Taco Bell party, right? And you can only come to the Taco Bell party if you can verify with the blockchain that you have this NFT in your wallet. And if you can do that, boom, you get entrance, you get to meet other crypto enthusiasts, you get to be around like-minded people. And I think that's the powerful nature of what NFTs can do, is they can also create real world incentives and real world use cases outside of the digital space. So it's not like we're going into the digital space only. It's like the real world and reality is being augmented by the digital space as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that, especially as all of us have a tangible physical product that is our core bread and butter product. I like this marrying of the digital and the tangible. So thank you for that. Okay, let's bring it into classical music. Let's bring it closer to home. Nick and Sam, Betty's Notebook. We've already talked about it many times in this 45 minutes so far. So we've established that it was the first classical music NFT. We've established that it was first a quote unquote normal performance. So can you all kind of close the loop and just briefly share what else is relevant about this case study and bringing this product to market?
It was a very interesting process that we had sort of thinking about Betty's Notebook. Like Aubrey mentioned, it was originally a live work. And when I approached Nick about creating Betty's Notebook, both of our minds kind of exploded because we didn't exactly, either of us, know what we were doing or how we were going to get all of this done. And so it was a process of jumping off the deep end and kind of exploring. And I told Nick from the very beginning, it's like, we're about to go on a journey that we have no idea how this is going to end. We have no idea how this is going to happen, but we're going to do it because we believe that this could potentially be life-changing for both of us and for the singers that we have, and for all of the collaborators and musicians a part of this. Really, what it came down to for us, Betty's Notebook, in 2 words, is about the supposed lost transcripts and last transcripts of Amelia Earhart as she was taken off her flight path. What we did with the work was actually create a cohesive 20-minute piece that was basically customizable for people who owned parts of it. And so what that did was it created this almost like a video game called Myst in 2004, where you're enveloped in this world where, you have to click on certain parts of, on a beach, you click on, a rock and you get another clue to figure out the ultimate mystery. We took audiences on a journey to be able to figure out what happened with Amelia Earhart, how she was taken off her flight path, and we focused it on different aspects of that journey. We worked very hard over a period of 8 months to talk with collectors, to anyone that would basically listen to us, galleries, museums, to try and figure out, who could potentially own something like this. And we believe that it was very iconic because it was one of the first of its kind. What ended up happening, and Nick, if you have any thoughts on this, happy for you to add anything. What ended up happening is actually the same folks that bought Beeple at 69 million also bought Betty's Notebook for 375,000. And what they described it as was they said, not only is the story incredibly compelling to us, it's also, the fact that it's the first. And so for them, it was this huge sort of revelation, and they took the leap of faith to sort of invest in this. Now, I will say that it's been a very interesting path since. These folks are not classical music people by any means. They're not. They in fact, prior to Betty's Notebook, they had listened to some jazz, but they didn't really know a whole lot about classical music. But they saw value in this, and I think it's really worth highlighting here the fact that what we are doing and what this proved, or at least is beginning to prove, is that whereas before musicians had to rely off of distribution, it was all about how many people can you get to buy an album. We no longer have to do that necessarily. Like, we have the ability now to be like a visual artist, to sell our one-of-ones, to sell the original art, and then to sell prints of that art. And so happy for Nick to elaborate on anything else, but I'm also trying to answer as many questions in the chat as possible. So I'll keep typing away as Nick adds to this.
Yes. So Sam set it up very well that we were going into uncharted territory. And how we distributed Betty's Notebook is very important to understand. Because what we didn't do is just put up a recording of Betty's Notebook on YouTube, right? That's not what this is. That's a fixed audio composition that you can have disseminated, and whether it's through Spotify or iTunes or YouTube or whatnot, we all know that the residuals that the musicians get, the one who records in the studio, is very little or nothing. So this was a different process where Betty's Notebook was put onto a digital gallery website called Async Art, and we sold different layers. Let's think about this analogy. If you have soprano, alto, and tenor and bass, what if you had 3 versions of the soprano, 3 versions of the alto, 3 versions of the tenor, and 3 versions of the bass? This is just a general analogy. You could have a different user experience based on which version of each voice part that you chose. So that's what we did with Betty's Notebook. We divided Betty's Notebook with a counterpoint into 4 main sections. And we provided 3 variations of each section. And we could sell the counterpoint. That's what we did. We allowed different buyers to buy this stream, this strata, this strata, this strata. And they have 3 different options. Now, this is where it gets interesting. These are four different buyers. And so based on their own individual preferences, they get to choose which variation of each strata they like. So when you put it together, you get a different combination each time. So there's 81 different permutations of Betty's notebook. And that's why it's crypto native. It's not just something we brought over from the classical world and try to fit it into the blockchain. We took a piece that was part of the avant-garde contemporary choral scene, but we thought, how do we tool this for the NFT space? And the way we did it is we started to think about very basic principles. Why do people find this attractive? Because the users who didn't go to a conservatory for 10 years, they get to participate in the music making process. And as Sam was alluding to, this opens up a whole new donor base of people who maybe haven't even walked across the threshold into a concert hall, let alone sign a check to fund an orchestra. We are talking about seriously connected and well-funded individuals who are willing to pay for high art, but now they're paying for high art in an area they're more comfortable with, and that's the digital world.
Thank you guys for that. I think it's really interesting that it's, if I can summarize it back this way, there was a through composed piece, performed it live, sold it, but then also like literally sold theme and variations, if it's okay for me to summarize it back that way. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Okay, we definitely are coming up on time, but Christina, I want you to talk about your piece, Prelude. There are many ways in which it's different from what we just learned about Betty's notebook. So if you can highlight those differences and how this played out for you, that would be great. And then we're going to go to Kim to talk about the Dallas Symphony's recent NFT project. So go for it.
Well, I composed Prelude specifically for an NFT. I released my first NFT in November of 2020, and I had already thought about releasing a larger piece for orchestra. And I got in touch with the conductor here in Nashville, Greg Wallenek, who has the Gateway Chamber Orchestra. It's a group I've worked with a bunch of times. They're a wonderful group. And I thought, well, you know, it's a community orchestra and we've worked together. They really focus on, you know, bringing the community together. And I thought this would be a great group to release an NFT with. And so Greg and I decided that it was perfect timing because they had already had a Haydn festival scheduled. So they were doing a recording and a filming. And so we would be able to have a WAV file for this project, a video, and I thought it would be cool if I also released the score and the parts to the piece with the NFT. So whoever bought the NFT Prelude could actually perform the piece if they had an orchestra too. So Greg had to get permission from the orchestra first, and everybody was on board. They thought it was a cool idea. Basically, the sentiment was, why not try it? You know, we have this recording session scheduled already, why not? So I wrote the piece in like 6 weeks. It's a short piece, about 5 minutes long. And we recorded it and released it on OpenSea. And basically the way we have it set up is that the proceeds from the sale go half and half to Gateway, half to me. The musicians were paid a union rate for the recording. So whatever their split is afterwards, they get royalties from. So yeah, it's a work that I wrote specifically to be part of this project, to be an NFT. It's something that I had wanted to do for a long time. And I was just very lucky that Greg and the orchestra were on board and wanted to try something new.
Thank you. And then moving on to the Dallas Symphony, I love that a major symphony charted these uncharted waters. So Kim, please tell us as much as you're willing to share about it. I know this project looked different than these two others we've just looked at. So tell us everything you can.
Right. So our approach was we essentially took what we thought was a really unique and collectible asset that was not created for the NFT world, and tried to create a 3-tiered offering. So just a quick bit of background about the actual content. So the Dallas Symphony invited 50 players from the Met Opera Orchestra to come to Dallas to perform Mahler 1, conducted by Fabio Luisi, who had spent 11 years at the Met and who had been contacted by many musicians of the Met Opera because they had been unpaid for a large period of time They were suffering and just seeking out work, and also just relationship that they had in the past. And so Fabio wanted to figure out something that we could do. And this was around the time when vaccines were, really ramping up. And so we decided to invite 50 musicians. So we had first, Mahler size orchestra of 100 people on the stage, and trying to have the social distancing with the big stage extension, and brass players up in the choral terrace and all that. And then an audience of about 500 people, which again is about 30% of the capacity. And so this concert, these rehearsals, all the activities that the musicians did, master classes with students in Dallas, the social activity between the two orchestras, and chamber music. They did 9 chamber music concerts together. We felt was an incredible story. And we felt that this was a moment in time that could be remembered through an NFT. And so basically, Sam really guided us through the whole process, because he had recently just been successful with the whole Betty's Notebook, and he helped us brainstorm and connect with people. And we decided to do a 3-tiered release, which had 3 price points. And, the first was an audio file with souvenir photos, and we released 25 of those at $100. And then the next was $1,000, which had 1 video movement, and then some other behind the scenes pieces of content and images, and a pass to our digital concert series for the year. And then the last was kind of the combination of what Taco Bell did, kind of, and what others have done in terms of creating the event component. So I talked with some Met musicians who agreed that they could do a reunion event in New York City. And so on Valentine's weekend in 2022, there's a reunion event with Fabio Luisi and some Met musicians and some musicians of the Dallas Symphony, not a full orchestra. The person who buys that NFT gets to be the VIP and have the dinner and have that whole concert experience. Plus they get the whole video of the original concert, plus a lot of exclusive content, behind the scenes footage and interviews and all kinds of things that really tell the whole story, and really highlight how unique that experience was for everyone and how emotional it was for everyone. And that's basically unlockable content, because NFTs are not structured so that you can have an hour-long video of a concert and then another half hour of video content. So we had to work through all of that. And Sam, I don't know if you want to jump in and add, but we spent quite a lot of time, and Sam really promoted it for us and connected us with everyone. And honestly, I don't think we would have been successful at all if we hadn't had his assistance.
Thanks, Kim. It's been an honor to work with the Dallas Symphony, and I love all these questions that are being asked in the chat. I'm trying to answer and type away as fast as I can. I think that the biggest thing to take away from here is that what we did with the Dallas Symphony is we created something that was classical music, but it was not classical music in the sense that it was art. Classical music is art. And when you frame art to people, to NFT people, especially the young, the average buyers between 20 and 39, it automatically becomes understandable. They may not understand or have heard of classical music before, but they certainly understand the idea of art. And the idea of art means that they can hang it in their house with a screen, like I do with my NFTs over here, as you can see. Or they can do it, they can display it somewhere else, or speculate on it and sell it. But the whole point and the whole thing that we really worked on with the Dallas Symphony was to reframe it as not just classical music, but it's art. And art has value and a rarity, and therefore deserves to be seen and purchased.
Awesome, thank you. Sam and Kim, I'm going to stick with you two for this next couple of questions. I know we're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to combine some of these next things I wanted to get through with all of us, and then we'll move to Q&A for people who want to stay for that. But what I'd like you both to do is talk through, if you will, pretty literally and tactically, what is step one? Commission the work. I mean, you know, like what are the steps? And then also bundling these questions together, the process of bringing it to market. This is not our typical audience, is my understanding, right? So what did you do? I know there was a lot of earned media with Betty's Notebook. I mean, anyways, all of that, if you guys could tag team that.
Sure. I think so. A lot of people, some people have asked, you know, what does it take to create an NFT? How much? What is the advertising cost? Step one, commission the work. We approached Nick in 2019, and I asked him on a whim to create this crazy work that was about a young woman in 1937 who heard supposedly the final transcripts of Amelia Earhart. So come up with a cool project, come up with an awesome product, commission it. Step two, record it. With Betty's Notebook, it was incredibly interesting, and I cannot believe that we were able to do what we did. It was during the heart of the pandemic. The full choir never sang with each other in the same room. They could only sing in small groups for 30 minutes at a time, and they all had to get COVID tests before every rehearsal in order to participate. So needless to say, it took about 2 to 4 times longer for us to actually record it. We didn't do it in a rehearsal space. We didn't do it in an acoustic space. We actually did it in a studio, and that's because part of the reason for that is because the piece itself was conducive to that sort of acoustic. Step 3, once you've sold it, mix it and master it. Step 4, like everything that you would do normally, step 4 is find the right platform for you. So this could be platforms like Nifty Gateway, Nifty's, Rarible, OpenSea, Async Art. You know, there are more marketplaces opening up every day where you can come to them and say, hey, I have this product, what are you willing to do? In the case of the Dallas Symphony, Rarible was so interested in them that they were like, we'll provide our own marketing dollars to promote, you know, your product. For us, it was also a little bit of that. But what is the most important, which is step 5, is to begin promoting your work yourself. And it's not about how many people you reach at this point, because the amount of crypto users currently is about 70, or unique wallets is about 70,000. We expect that has grown about 3,000% since 2 months ago, when people were saying that crypto is dead and that NFTs are dead. And what's so incredibly important is finding the right collector. We had to flip over every single rock and talk with every museum and get 3 million no's in order to get 1 maybe and then 2 yeses when we finally got there. And so what's really important is the entire NFT community lives on Twitter, and some of them live on Instagram, and then others live on Clubhouse, but that's sort of phasing out into Twitter Spaces. So what I encourage you to do is when you post your NFT, be a part of the community. The most important thing that I have seen be so successful is just being a part of the community, interacting with people, and giving the awareness. Many times with Betty's Notebook, people came to us that had never been to a classical music performance before. In fact, I had 5 people tell me after one of our listening parties saying, I hate classical music. I've never gone to classical music, to a classical music performance, but you did something different and I'm willing to listen. And they ended up actually buying, you know, like a small like NFT that we produced afterwards. So it's all about promotion, but it's all about knowing who to go to. And the only way that you'll know who to go to is by being a part of the community and seeing how people interact, what collectors collect and what their interests are. And then finally, it's basically negotiation. Many of these people who buy NFTs are looking for long-term value. They want your piece to be successful. It's in their best interest that they're going to spend $375,000 on a piece of work, or in the Dallas Symphony's case, like 20 ETH. They want to know that there's longevity to that project. And so therefore, they want to see a roadmap. They want to see what else you're going to be doing, what's down the pipeline, what's going to be happening, like what things are you going to be a part of, because that in essence will raise the value of the original work. And so in that way, collectors are actually investing in you and not just altruistically giving because out of the goodness of their heart. And I think that there's something really great about that and really valuable about that, and also something that's not so great about that, right? It all comes, it's all sort of thing. So with the Dallas Symphony, it was actually very interesting. And Kim, feel free to jump in at any point. They had already had all of these IP assets ready to go. They were like, Kim called me and she was like, I have all of this. I don't know what to do with it. Help me. And here it is. And so we identified some of the most effective sort of clips and strategies to do it. And then we posted it, and we curated it, and then we posted it on Rarible, which then marketed the Dallas Symphony and several other folks. So that's in a nutshell. It's commission the IP, create it, record it, master it, mix it, mint it, find the right platform for you, whether that's Rarible, OpenSea, or whatever else, and then promote it, and then negotiate it. And it's that easy. It's like a piece of visual art. It's very much not different than that.
I'll just add a quick couple of things. Where I think we didn't do as well as we could have is in the get in the community, like Sam was talking about, because we're not used to being in it. We're really good at being in our own community. We're not that good about being in a new community. It takes us a lot of time, and we don't feel comfortable, and we don't know how to talk to people and all that stuff. So that, I think, was a good learning for us. I will say the other interesting piece is that people in our regular community, people who love our music, people who want to support us, wanted to not go through the crypto world and bid separately like it was a Christie's auction or something. So I guess that could be the reason why, if one was in more of a kind of a traditional sort of space, that maybe going with one of the traditional auction houses who do that behind the scenes work for you could help a lot. But in any case, I think it was an important thing for us to be getting the new media talked about in different places. It helped a lot with branding and what we're trying to do more broadly as an organization. And I think that this was not just about money for us, and our $100 offering went like in a day. So price point is something that matters too, but I just wanted to add those comments to what Sam said.
Thank you. I think that's such a good segue into the final part. I promised everybody, why not to do this? What are the challenges with entering this space? So we've touched on some of them already. Thank you, Kim, for your honesty. It's a new space. You said it, we're not great always at branching out from our sort of very traditional close to home community. So I think that's a real challenge for anybody considering moving into this space, entering this market. I'm just going to rattle off a few more things, and you all feel free to chime in. Clearly, this group of the 6 of us has drank the crypto Kool-Aid, but to be fair, I do want to name some of these things that have come up, so you all can feel free to respond. And then that will also segue into Q&A, because some of the questions are baked into these challenges or reasons not to do this. So again, to rattle some things off, the market is not proven for classical music. Traditional collectors don't want to collect this way. There are the environmental concerns. There's the responsibility that comes when you become an NFT issuer. That's different than maybe a traditional model. Maybe some people's music isn't suited for it. We've seen some celebrities roll out pretty poor products as NFTs, and it did not go well for them. Any response to all of these concerns?
Yeah, I just want to say something. When you said celebrities rolling out, I think when you talk about community, it is really important to be a part of the community first before you release an NFT. I was always taught as a kid, you don't go to someone's house with your hands hanging, right? You don't go somewhere without bringing something. So bring your vision, bring, what you think for the future of NFTs, something, build community around it. We just started the other day a Discord channel called New Classical on the Block for musicians who are interested in it and don't know where to start and want to kind of dip into NFTs. So we're hoping to build a classical community to help people get into NFTs because it isn't there yet. It's looked upon very kind of distasteful for these celebrities to dip in and out. It's like a money grab. They're not really into the technology or into the vision of NFTs. A lot of artists are into it because we're trying to fix broken systems, things that haven't worked for artists in the past. We see this new solution. So for someone to come in and say, oh, I'm releasing an album and, you know, make a ton of money and then disappear for a year, it's not seen as a good thing. So I think really get on Twitter, get on Discord, get to know some of these artists, maybe do a cross multidisciplinary collaboration, something like that to kind of get into the space. But I think with any new space that you enter, you know, you have to show that you're there for the right reasons, and that's important.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to build on what Christina said, because I think that is the big challenge with the classical music business, is that we want to put our hand in a lot of different things and not commit and just get the low-hanging fruit. And I think you really do, if you want to actually be in this space for real, then you have to really be in this space, like commit like you commit to everything else you do. You don't do an education program and show up at a school once a year and, you know, do a class and then not see them again and cancel for any reason. And, you know, we thought we kind of had more of a commitment. When we realized what the commitment really was, we didn't have the bandwidth to put the right kind of commitment in. And I wouldn't go to the next step until I build that whole process and am able to fulfill the relationships, because it's a whole new set of relationships, right? And if you want your relationship to be successful, you have to put the time and energy in.
If I could just quickly add to that, I think what the opportunity that we have today is, and the opportunity that Verdigris saw, was very grateful to receive, is that we have the opportunity to pay musicians and value musicians and artists really highly. And generally speaking, I know that for our nonprofit, for my nonprofit specifically, I can't talk for other organizations, that's a challenge. That's always a challenge for us, to be able to hire the best possible talent and pay them what a sustainable living wage, especially during COVID-19. And the ability that we have today with blockchain technology is to be able to, for the first time ever, have the prospect of doing that. And that to me, and it may not work. We may find that there is no market for classical music. I honestly highly doubt that, but at least we try, right? And I'm willing. There's like, even if there's like a 10% chance to be a part of the community, to get people more aware about classical music, even if that doesn't lead to blockchain sales, it leads to awareness. And at the end of the day, we are all struggling with audiences. We are all struggling with participation. We're all struggling to get younger generations to be part of classical music. And this blockchain technology, we have found at Verdigris Ensemble, and with Nick and with Christina and with Drew and Kim, is that we are getting a new audience here, and we're building something slowly but surely. And it's really exciting to be able to get new faces, new people in the door, even if that means that we may not be ultimately successful in the blockchain aspect, which, parentheses, I highly doubt will happen. So that's my 2 cents.
I have to say that there's something that's happened in this space that can never really happen before. And that to me is incentivized collaboration. For instance, I am having a meeting with a hip hop artist on Friday, and we're talking about collaborating in the NFT space. Why does this make sense? Because the NFT space already incentivizes the hip hop artist participation like it does mine. It's not as if he's going to only get a check for showing up on a stage for a collaboration. There's the whole money financial aspect that incentivizes people to get into EDM, hip hop, pop, country in the first place. That means they get royalties, they make money off their music, they get promotion, they can forward their own careers through this space. So it's not just about inclusion for inclusion's sake or collaboration for collaboration's sake. It's a redefined marketplace that creates really strong networking collaborations, connections, because people see that this is a gold rush and they want to participate in this as artists to further their careers in ways that were never possible before. And I think by default, if the right people are doing this, it's also going to further the art form.
Thank you for that. I think that's a pretty good ending note. I will just say there's one more question that this is open for everybody. I thank you, Sam, for being so active in the chat. Kim, I saw you were active in the chat or the Q&A as well, typing those answers. So thank you both for covering so much of those. This question though that just popped up for everybody, recommendations for further reading, listening, for people who want to know more, what should they do?
I literally just finished, or I'm putting the finishing touches on. I'm going to have it out in about the next hour or so on my website. Pretty much a summary of what we've spoken about today, like the defining the terms of cryptocurrency, blockchain, and at the very bottom of that blog post, my blog is called Lots of Thoughts. It's going to have a bunch of links from Investopedia, Wikipedia, just different rabbit holes you can fall down to kind of like learn a little bit more. I think like what's really important about this space is taking many different sources, looking at many different diagrams, getting many different a diversity of explanations, because it's kind of like anything that's really complex. You may be told how to do something over and over and over again, like having a viola lesson with like one teacher or two teachers, but the fifth teacher may say the same thing all those teachers have said, but they said it in a certain way to where it clicked in your brain. And so I would love to provide that service for you. So my website is thatviolakid.com. You check out my blog and I'll have it up in about an hour.
And I just released a guide too, less technical. So I think both together would be perfect. It was just kind of step-by-step of how I released my NFT and links to different platforms and open versus closed kind of platforms. So I think it'll be good bookends.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to call it. For everybody who hung with us to the end watching, thank you so much for just educating yourselves, for being part of this conversation. To our panel, Kim, Sam, Nick, Christina, Drew, oh my gosh, you all have educated me so much. I am so grateful. And everybody should know everybody did this totally as a free service, really just to share information with the field at large. So totally a labor of love right now. And I hope it was helpful to you. If you're watching online later, again, we're so glad that you were able to watch as well. I am going to be posting this. So from all of us, everybody watching, thank you for joining us. And that's a wrap. Hopefully you learned something. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Aubrey.
Thank you.